It started with a joke in the second-floor auditorium during the quarterly all-hands meeting. Who decorated the data closet? Radio Shack? Gavin Cross snorted into his microphone, his eyes gleaming with that particular brand of venture-backed arrogance, as if he had personally invented corporate synergy and his executive sarcasm in the exact same breath. The entire room erupted into laughter. Well, most of them did. The junior engineers offered strained, polite chuckles to protect their performance reviews. The marketing interns laughed genuinely, simply because they did not know any better. As for me, I sat in the fifth row, 48 years old and holding a cup of lukewarm cafeteria coffee, staring at the glowing rack of servers I had built and nursed like a fragile child for 8 full years. I was Nolan Vance, the principal infrastructure architect at Apex Commerce, and I knew with absolute clarity that this was the exact moment Gavin pressed detonate on his own high-priced career. Gavin had arrived 3 weeks earlier as our shiny new chief financial officer, armed with a razor-sharp jawline, custom-tailored linen suits, and an executive resume heavily laminated in Silicon Valley buzzwords. Transformation, margin velocity, capital fluidity. He was the exact archetype of corporate excess that board members adored. He wore brown leather loafers without socks, smelled faintly of expensive oat milk cologne, and operated under the delusional assumption that artificial intelligence was a magic wand that could instantly replace 2 decades of actual system architecture. Now, he stood on the stage, waving a green laser pointer over a slide, featuring a photograph of my custom server rack in the secondary data room, treating it like a middle school science project he intended to publicly humiliate. "This little setup right here," Gavin declared, leaning against the podium and grinning at the executive team, "has been humming away in Room B for what, nearly a decade? Legacy hardware, completely redundant, burning company funds. We are spending $2,400 a month just to power Nolan's Nostalgia Museum. In the spirit of operational efficiency, it is time to pull the plug." Literally. A few more corporate yes-men laughed, the sound dying down just enough for me to hear the steady pulse pounding behind my temples. I did not flinch. I did not raise my voice or object. I simply took another sip of black coffee and watched this clown publicly roast the single piece of infrastructure in the building that had not experienced a single second of unscheduled downtime since the previous decade. What Gavin and his spreadsheet analysts failed to comprehend was simple yet catastrophic. That custom rack was not a dusty collection of outdated parts. It was the living, breathing heart behind our $100,000 per hour e-commerce transaction pipeline. It ran a proprietary, highly specialized real-time transaction validator that I had hand-coded to fix microsecond token drift and asynchronous database latency. Our flashy multi-million-dollar cloud infrastructure looked impressive in investor decks. But without my local validator node to synchronize global states, the cloud engine would implode under heavy transaction volumes. I had documented this reality in 6 separate technical memos over the past 3 years. I had submitted architectural risk assessments to the executive committee, but Gavin had skimmed his executive onboarding binder like it was a disposable airport magazine. He saw an old server rack with blinking green lights and assumed it was dead weight waiting to be trimmed. "Let us streamline the future." "People," Gavin announced, closing his presentation with his signature flash of veneered teeth. To anyone who actually understood enterprise tech, that statement translated directly to, "Let us unplug critical systems I do not understand and pray nothing breaks until I collect my annual performance bonus and jump to my next executive role." Back at my workstation, the internal engineering messaging channels were lighting up with anxious chatter. Team members were asking if management was serious and whether the core validator was really slated for removal. I did not enter the chat. Instead, I quietly logged into the master validator node one final time. I exported a full activity state mirror to an isolated encrypted terminal. I tagged the backup configuration file with a single reference code, protocol Echo 9. I had built that server rack myself out of high-grade server components, sourcing redundant power supplies and enterprise drives, when the company was just a scrappy startup operating out of a leased warehouse. It was a masterpiece of lean, brutal engineering, No bloated third-party frameworks, no unnecessary webhooks, just raw mathematical precision. It processed incoming payload signatures, resolved database locks, and patched token conflicts in real time, 24 hours a day, without ever asking for recognition or a raise. At 8:47 the next morning, two facilities workers rolled into the secondary data room with a heavy-duty industrial dolly. One was sipping an energy drink. The other was chewing on a breakfast bar. Neither of them had the slightest inkling of what they were touching. I stood near the doorway, arms crossed over my chest, watching them approach the rack. Got direct orders from Gavin, the taller worker muttered, shrugging his shoulders. We are clearing out the nostalgia stack. The nostalgia stack. That was the title Gavin had given to the sole anchor, holding our entire digital enterprise above water. The workers reached behind the cabinet and yanked the primary power leads. One by one, the glowing green indicator lights dimmed and died like fading stars. The deep, familiar hum of the cooling fans slowed to a complete halt, leaving the room in a chilling, unnatural silence. 8 years of continuous, flawless system balance ended in a fraction of a second. I said nothing. Even when the workers bumped the steel frame against the door jamb on their way out, moving a critical piece of enterprise infrastructure like a discarded piece of living room furniture, I remained silent. My hands stayed jammed deep in my pockets to conceal the slight tremble of cold adrenaline. If I spoke, I would have unraveled the quiet discipline required for what was about to unfold. The night before, while Gavin was undoubtedly practicing his executive presentation slides in front of a mirror, I had finalized a secure data capsule on an external drive equipped with hardware encryption and biometric authentication. That drive contained the cryptographic validator keys, the raw source code, and an unalterable, time-stamped log of every manual patch I had executed over the past 2,900 days. I walked back to my desk, picked up my personal mug, packed my notebook, and handed a single sealed red envelope to Brenda Hall in Human Resources. The envelope was marked, to be opened only by board legal counsel. Inside was a dead USB drive from a decade ago and a paperclip, a simple puzzle designed to buy time while legal scrambled. I informed Brenda that I would be taking my accrued remote work days for the remainder of the week. She nodded vaguely, consumed by her own administrative tasks. I took the quiet rear stairwell down to the parking lot. It was the same stairwell I had walked down years ago when our first major product launch went live, back when we were a small team with big dreams. Back then, we cared about building systems that actually worked. Now, executive vanity had replaced engineering excellence. But I was not panicking. Panic is reserved for individuals who lack a contingency plan. I had a plan, perfected over months of watching corporate incompetence flourish. At my home office, I set up my personal workstation in a temperature-controlled room I had customized years ago after a roof leak taught me the absolute necessity of local redundancy. On my dual monitors, I launched the private mirror system. My isolated terminal hummed quietly, receiving passive state feeds from the network edge. I sat back with a fresh cup of Earl Grey tea, settled into my chair, and began watching the slow, inevitable mathematical breakdown of Apex Commerce. It began the way all catastrophic enterprise software failures do, quietly, subtly, and initially masked as minor operational anomalies. 48 hours after the server rack was wheeled out to the warehouse loading dock, the first automated ticket hit the technical support queue. A retail customer reported receiving 2 separate refund confirmations for a single canceled order. 20 minutes later, 3 more identical tickets popped up from different geographic regions across the country. Within 2 hours, the customer service refund queue was backing up like a blocked storm drain, but no central alarm sounded. The system was failing without triggering standard alerts, because the cloud provider was only monitoring server container uptime, completely blind to internal transactional logic. Our outsourced third-party cloud management vendor, an overly confident firm based 2 time zones away whose representatives loved using buzzwords like seamless integration, dismissed the issue immediately. They logged a low-priority note attributing the duplicate refunds to temporary regional network congestion and domain name server latency. Their official recommended fix was textbook junior support logic. Clear the session caches and restart the cloud microservices. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the core order queue began dropping packets like a broken conveyor belt. Transactions became trapped in perpetual processing loops. Payment gateway tokens timed out before authorization handshakes could complete. On the customer-facing website, thousands of shoppers clicked the checkout button, waded through infinite loading spinners, and eventually abandoned their carts in frustration, taking their business directly to our primary competitors. Yet, on the high-level executive dashboard, the central status indicator remained a comforting, deceptive shade of bright green. In corporate enterprise environments, green simply means nobody has looked at the underlying database metrics yet. During the Thursday morning executive sync meeting on Zoom, Gavin Cross joined the video call sporting a fresh haircut and a blindingly bright smile. We experienced a tiny bit of minor operational turbulence over the last 24 hours, Gavin announced smoothly, adjusting his camera angle. But our cloud infrastructure is handling the load beautifully. All key systems are green. If anything feels sluggish, perhaps engineering should just give the cloud a quick reboot. I watched the meeting recording from my kitchen table while feeding my dog. Listening to Gavin speak was like listening to a slick salesperson explain quantum mechanics after reading a single pamphlet. He had no concept of how dangerous the situation was. What Gavin failed to understand was that my local server rack had not merely processed transactions. It had continuously calibrated them. It performed microsecond mathematical adjustments to prevent asynchronous token drift. Imagine spinning a silver coin on a glass table. As long as a steady hand touches it periodically, it spins flawlessly. My custom server rack was that steady hand. Without it, the digital coin was wobbling violently. Token expiration timestamps were aging out of alignment. Refunds were duplicating because the central database could not verify state locks without timing out. It was not a random software bug. It was pure digital entropy, a relentless mathematical degradation compounding every single minute. By Thursday afternoon, internal accounting metrics began revealing a 6% variance between gross recorded sales orders and actual bank cash capture. In a company processing millions of dollars daily, a 6% gap represents a catastrophic hemorrhage of capital. But Gavin dismissed the discrepancy during an emergency finance huddle, arguing that variance was perfectly normal during infrastructure transitions. He ended the call early to attend a lunch meeting with executive recruiters. By Friday morning, the company dashboards were actively contradicting one another in real time. The sales team dashboard reported $1,480,000 in daily gross volume. Accounting showed $1,312,000 in settled deposits. Marketing insisted we had hit $1,530,000 and attempted to trigger an automated celebration channel on Slack. Meanwhile, internal refund records showed nearly $200,000 in unauthorized payout dispatches. Nobody in executive management could reconcile the numbers. Apex Commerce was effectively being haunted by ghost financial metrics. Clara, a veteran accountant who survived 4 previous corporate restructurings, posted a desperate message in the finance channel asking whether the company was generating profit or bleeding cash, pointing out that the enterprise accounting software was flagging massive balance discrepancies. Then came the internal engineering incident report that finally lit the fuse. A sharp junior developer named Toby compiled a thorough 12-page diagnostic breakdown of the transaction pipeline. Toby identified the core issue with remarkable accuracy, documenting that backup cloud nodes were failing to compensate for asynchronous token delays, causing timestamps to diverge exponentially and creating phantom echo transactions. It was a brilliant piece of technical analysis. It was also Toby's final day as an employee of Apex Commerce. Gavin Cross, paralyzed by growing panic and desperate to protect his executive narrative, fired Toby immediately. Gavin claimed the young developer was spreading unnecessary drama, creating theoretical panic, and undermining team morale. There was no formal human resources review, no exit interview, just an immediate revocation of network credentials and a brief public message stating that Toby had departed to pursue other opportunities. I watched Toby's access get cut in real time on my mirror display. Another honest engineer sacrificed to protect an executive's fragile vanity. That was the moment I initiated my next move. I drafted a brief, highly specific email routed through an encrypted third-party relay directly to the board's legal counsel subject. Protocol Echo 9 System Integrity Notice. Reference. Infrastructure Patch Logs. Version 2.7b, lines 45 through 78. Immediate architectural review advised. The message contained no threats, no emotional language, and no personal signatures. But to an enterprise corporate attorney, reference to a specific unlisted protocol log is an immediate warning signal. Protocol Echo 9 was an internal architectural failsafe. I had written into the core system documentation 3 years earlier, detailing the exact chain reaction that would occur if the primary physical validator node was unceremoniously removed. I did not need to burn the building down. I simply handed the legal department a magnifying glass and pointed it at the smoke. By Saturday morning, the executive team was trapped in a crisis of their own making. The company had spent 5 months preparing for its flagship Q2 Blitz sale, a massive 48-hour promotional event featuring 40% discounts across all major product lines. Tens of thousands of dollars had been poured into national digital advertising, podcast sponsorships, and high-profile social media marketing campaigns. At 11:42 on Saturday morning, right at the peak hour of shopping traffic, the payment processing engine suffered a catastrophic structural lockup. On the front-end website, order confirmations completely ceased. Customers clicked the complete purchase button and were trapped in endless redirect loops. Payment gateways, unable to establish master timestamp validation from the missing server rack, defaulted to automated customer protection protocols. The system began automatically triggering full refunds for orders that had never actually settled, pouring cash back out to customers while failing to capture incoming payments. Over $600,000 in misfired refunds executed automatically within the first 2 hours of the sale. The public fallout was instantaneous and brutal. A prominent fitness influencer named Brock, who possessed over 2 million followers and had been paid $50,000 to promote the sale, published a live video showing his checkout screen stuck on an infinite buffering wheel. Apex Commerce just charged my card twice and gave me 0 confirmation numbers, Brock told his massive audience, showing his phone screen directly to the camera. Do not buy from them, guys. This whole Blitz sale is a complete scam. The video exploded across social media networks, accumulating 500,000 views in under 3 hours. Thousands of angry customers flooded customer service channels, demanding immediate answers, while systemic payment processing errors mounted exponentially. Inside Apex Commerce, internal communications transformed into a digital horror movie. Finance managers were screaming in Slack channels that phantom refunds were draining company operational reserves. Operations leads were reporting that physical warehouse inventory was being locked up by ghost orders that possessed no valid transaction IDs. In the middle of this escalating nightmare, Gavin Cross called an emergency executive Zoom meeting at 1:15 on Saturday afternoon. 12 senior leaders joined the call, but only 2 dared to turn their video cameras on. The rest sat in terrified silence, realizing that the company was tumbling off a financial cliff. Gavin appeared on screen wearing a pressed white shirt, his ring light reflecting off his pale forehead. He flashed his practiced executive smile, though his eyes darted nervously across his monitors. Team, I want to reassure everyone that what we are experiencing is merely a temporary visibility hiccup, Gavin insisted, his voice pitching slightly higher than usual. Our cloud partners are actively working on a routing patch. We are advising public relations to issue a statement emphasizing our commitment to proactive system modernization. He was tap dancing on thin ice with heavy boots. What about the master transaction logs? Demanded a board representative who had joined the call unannounced. We have finance reporting $600,000 in uncollected orders, yet engineering says the transaction logs are completely inaccessible. Gavin, where are the diagnostic logs? Gavin swallowed hard, his confidence visibly crumbling. We are encountering a brief credential synchronization delay. Standard protocol security. My team is resolving it as we speak. He was lying, and everyone on the call knew it. The master diagnostic logs were not missing. They were encrypted. When I built the validator system years ago, following an incident where a previous manager attempted to alter audit records to cover up an accounting blunder, I locked the master configuration logs behind a custom cryptographic key paired with biometric authentication. Without my specific administrative passphrase, no one, not Gavin, not the cloud vendors, not even a supercomputer, brute-forcing passwords for a century, could access or override the core validator controls. At 2:27 that afternoon, my phone vibrated on my desk. It was a text message from Gideon, a senior back-end engineer who had worked alongside me for 5 years. Gideon, you knew this was going to happen when they wheeled the rack out, didn't you? I stared at the screen for a long moment before typing my reply. Nolan, I documented the dependency in 3 separate architectural reports. Gavin ordered it unplugged. Cause and effect. I put my phone down and returned to my kitchen, where I was baking fresh banana bread. Through my mirror terminal, I watched the digital collapse continue with clinical detachment. I felt no malicious glee, only the deep, quiet satisfaction of an engineer whose warnings had been validated by the unrelenting laws of system logic. You cannot cut the structural pillars of a building and then express surprise when the roof collapses inward. By Saturday evening, the financial damage had breached $4 million in lost gross merchandise value, failed authorizations, and automated refund errors. The company's primary payment gateway provider officially suspended Apex Commerce's merchant account due to abnormal transaction error rates, effectively shutting down all online commerce operations nationwide. By Sunday morning, the corporate atmosphere at Apex Commerce headquarters was suffocating. The board of directors, finally awakening to the immense scale of the disaster, bypassed executive leadership entirely and retained an independent forensic technology audit firm. The audit team arrived at 7 a.m., charging $600 an hour per auditor, with absolute authority to inspect every server, access log, code commit, and email record in the company's history. For 19 relentless hours, the auditors dissected the corporate infrastructure. They traced database transactions, examined container configurations, analyzed packet flows, and audited executive communication archives. At 11 p.m. on Sunday night, the audit team delivered their preliminary findings directly to the board of directors in an emergency closed-door session. The report was an absolute execution of Gavin Cross's executive credibility. The multi-million-dollar cloud infrastructure that Gavin had boasted about was revealed to be nothing more than a series of secondary mirror nodes. The entire cloud network possessed zero independent master validation capability. It was architecturally hardwired to rely on Nolan's custom physical server rack in Data Room B for real-time timestamp calibration and asynchronous token synchronization. The moment Gavin ordered facilities to pull the physical power leads on that rack, he had severed the central nervous system of the entire enterprise. Furthermore, the forensic auditors uncovered a devastating paper trail within the corporate email archives. They discovered 3 full years of detailed technical warnings submitted by me, explicitly outlining the exact architectural vulnerabilities that had just destroyed the company's weekend revenue. One specific email thread was highlighted in red on the board's briefing slides too. Gavin Cross, Chief Financial Officer. From Nolan Vance, Principal Infrastructure Architect. March 3rd, 11:14 a.m. Subject, Critical System Dependency, Physical Validator Node, Gavin. I am reiterating that our secondary cloud mirrors do not possess independent master validation logic. If the physical server rack in Data Room B is decommissioned or powered down, asynchronous token drift will spiral out of control within 48 hours, resulting in severe data corruption and systemic transaction failures. Please confirm executive alignment before taking any action regarding this hardware. The system metadata attached to the email proved that Gavin had opened the message, marked it as read, and never responded. The legal implications were catastrophic for Gavin personally. In corporate law, when an executive willfully ignores explicit technical warnings from senior technical staff and takes reckless actions that cause massive financial destruction to the firm, They breached their fundamental fiduciary duty of care to shareholders. Gavin had not merely made an operational error. He had committed gross executive negligence. Late Sunday night, around midnight, Jules, a night shift IT technician who was monitoring physical facility security, witnessed Gavin pacing back and forth inside the darkened executive glass conference room. Gavin had removed his expensive leather shoes and was walking barefoot across the carpet, his designer shirt drenched in cold sweat. In his trembling hands, he was holding an unpowered backup hard drive, staring at it as if praying it would magically fix the disaster. Jules watched through the glass as Gavin collapsed into a leather chair, put his head in his hands, and whispered aloud to the empty room. I unplugged the validator. Gavin finally understood the truth. The custom server rack he had mocked as outdated decor in front of 200 employees was the only thing that had been keeping his executive career afloat. At 6:45 on Monday morning, my cell phone rang. The caller ID displayed a high-level corporate legal firm based in Manhattan. I let it ring twice before answering. Nolan Vance speaking, I said calmly. Mr. Vance, this is Vivian Thorne, General Counsel representing the Board of Directors of Apex Commerce, a refined, authoritative voice responded. We are facing an unprecedented operational crisis, and our independent audit confirms that you are the sole authority capable of restoring enterprise integrity. The board requests your immediate return to spearhead our system recovery efforts under an emergency advisory contract. I took a slow sip of hot coffee before responding. Miss Thorne, I replied, my conditions for returning are entirely non-negotiable. Name them, Vivian said without hesitation. I outlined my terms clearly and firmly, leaving zero room for corporate compromise or executive maneuvering. First, I require a 3-month emergency advisory retainer, paid in full and cleared in my personal bank account before I step foot on company property. Second, I demand total administrative control over all IT infrastructure, software deployment, and system architecture, reporting exclusively to the board of directors with zero executive oversight. Third, I will work on a flexible remote schedule of my own choosing. And finally, Gavin Cross must be terminated immediately for gross breach of fiduciary duty, his network access permanently revoked, his security badge deactivated, and his departure announced publicly to the entire company before I plug in a single cord. Vivian Thorne did not hesitate for even a second. Consider it done, Mr. Vance, she stated plainly. The contract will be in your email inbox within 20 minutes, and funds will be wired immediately upon execution. 4 hours later, at 8:01 on Monday morning, I pulled my vehicle into the corporate parking facility at Apex Commerce headquarters. I stepped out wearing my standard work boots, dark jeans, and a simple flannel shirt, carrying my trusty thermos of black coffee. As I walked through the main glass entrance, an extraordinary atmosphere settled over the lobby. The usual morning bustle had vanished, replaced by a heavy, reverent hush. Employees who were standing near the coffee station stopped talking and turned to look. Junior engineers offered subtle nods of deep respect. Department managers quickly looked down at their phones, unable to meet my gaze. Human resources staff peeked through their glass office windows like spectators, watching an apex predator walk freely down the corridor. Even Brenda Hall, who usually greeted everyone with energetic corporate enthusiasm, simply offered a quiet, respectful nod as I passed her desk. I walked down the executive corridor past Gavin Cross's corner office. The heavy glass door was wide open, the room completely cleared out. Gavin's personal belongings were jammed into 2 cardboard boxes on the floor. His pristine mahogany desk stood bare, stripped of its brass nameplate. On his monitor screen, an anonymous employee had placed a bright yellow sticky note containing 3 simple words written in thick black marker. Plug it back. Gavin was gone. Escorted out of the building by corporate security at 7:30 a.m., his executive vanity reduced to a footnote in company history. I continued walking straight to Data Room B, unlocked the heavy steel security door, and stepped inside. The room was dark and silent, retaining the faint scent of cool metal and electrical wire. There, sitting on the heavy transport dolly in the corner, was my custom server rack, exactly where facilities had left it days ago. I rolled the rack back to its dedicated bay, aligned the heavy steel frame, and locked the caster wheels into position. I reconnected the primary fiber optic cables, plugged in the redundant power leads, and flipped the main breaker switch. A low, satisfying hum immediately filled the room as the high-output cooling fan spun up to full velocity. The array of green LED indicators flashed in sequence, stabilizing into a steady rhythmic pulse. On my mobile diagnostic terminal, I authorized the biometric handshake and executed the decryption key for protocol Echo 9. The system response was instantaneous and magnificent. Within 90 seconds, the physical validator node established synchronization with the cloud network. Within 5 minutes, microsecond token drift across all payment gateways was completely eliminated. By the 10-minute mark, the global transaction queue cleared its backlog, double refund loops stopped firing, and live online sales orders began processing with flawless precision. On the executive revenue monitoring tools upstairs, the live transaction counter lit up like a Christmas tree, processing thousands of successful customer purchases per minute without a single dropped packet. An hour later, internal messaging channels exploded with news of the total system recovery. Someone leaked an excerpt from an internal accounting email with the subject line, "Nolan's Nostalgia Museum saves the enterprise." A junior engineer created a meme featuring Gavin's executive headshot, captioned with his ill-fated quote, "Streamline the future." It was shared across every internal team chat within minutes. As for me, I did not attend any victory meetings, nor did I stand on a stage to collect applause. I simply brought a folding chair into Data Room B, set my coffee thermos on the floor, and sat in the warm, rhythmic hum of the machinery. I watched the green lights blink their familiar binary lullaby, feeling the steady vibration of the server rack beneath my boots. In the corporate world, slick executives will always try to sell flashy promises, cost-cutting shortcuts, and buzzword-laden narratives. But when the noise clears and the dust settles, enterprise reality is governed by absolute mathematical truth. Gavin Cross thought my server rack was useless decoration. I knew it was the engine holding his world together. And, as I took a slow sip of my coffee in the quiet hum of the data room, I smiled, knowing that some lessons in corporate physics are worth every single dollar.